In 2016, I knew Donald Trump was going to win, and now that seems like a tragically cruel thing to say. I knew when a dictator was going to rise. Yet, knowing that a bad thing is going to happen does not make you popular. This is what happened in 2024. I felt 50-50. Just saying that Kamala had a 50% chance of winning made people think I was oddly Trumpian or supporting him. But the truth is, as somebody who studied history, he had a good chance. When it came to America and its picks of presidents, unfortunately, America had something in common with my dating life. For however much I swore I wanted to do better, I always picked the same worse when it came to partners. Donald Trump totally matches my paternal abuse and, in turn, choices of male figures. They lied to my face, totally made fun of my body, stole from me, and verbally abused me enough to believe that somehow I deserved them. When it comes to political leaders throughout history, humanity has always chosen the guy that gave them kind words, then he did actions. And for me, that always felt like a trauma response. Somehow I was so saturated of cruel actions that along the way of my life, I fooled myself into believing that kind words were kind acts because I cannot face the fear that they weren't, and I still had never received a kinder action. Donald Trump took over America because of our history of presidents. We never really had one that was good or at least kind to all. We were still waiting for our perfect boyfriend and had reached a point very similar to me, so existential it made us wonder if he'd ever arrive. So we invented him. Women can't pick out of love, Josie said. We were watching The Bear season 3 again, and Carmine was pining over his college sweetheart that he somehow had abandoned again. And the internet was torn because it wanted him with Sin, who he had turned into a anxious being just like himself. We can't pick for love, she said again. We have to pick for money. I'm joining the 4B movement. How? You're a hoe, I laughed. Out of all my friends, Josie's casualness with sex was admirable because she was so safe and explorative, like a real life Samantha from Sex and the City. She had a level endurance for the heartbreak and endangerment that even a casual fling with a man can bring into your female life. Yet that was her stamina to shut down and shut out men the minute they threatened her with making her shutting out herself. Men aren't good at sex, and that's a fact, she said. So we might as well forbe it. The internet was ablaze with a global movement that started in Korea, the 4B movement, of which women cut off men in terms of dating, sex, and even business, a movement that embraced making women the center of their own lives with a price that felt pretty safe. Living your life without men, making your womanly life the full center. You were the center of your own world. And I understood it because we take care of men, we birth men, and those beautiful baby boys somehow grow up to be our enemies. You think the world will end with Trump? I said. I asked and wondered if, as somebody who not only studied history but studied its psychology, the war, peace, and overall oppressive movements throughout the world and time. If there was one thing I had learned is that humanity is resilient, but we're also frickin' annoying because again, we vote like I date. We put ourselves in the edge, climb out of it, and somehow end up back in that same edge. If there was something that the world wars had taught me that I found tragically funny in the sense of I'm amazed how stupid we are, is that at the end of the day it was 12 angry men. We had 12 leaders talking to each other, and over 250 million people would die. The environment would change, both in media and climate and in total. And all that to realize we were one world. Then here we were, about to go through another world war. And would we realize and actually stick to the lesson that a 1% should not rule over the 99? Once again, America had dated exactly like me and chosen somebody that would dominate them, that did not deserve power over their life just because it had absolutely no clue how to treat its trauma or even acknowledge how deeply it ran. All right, let's discuss. Let's heal. Um, So yeah, I don't know why we watch The Bear so much. I love that that's my first comment on this episode. I'm like, is it a comfort show? Has it become my comfort show? I read something that people with ADHD have the tendency to rewatch shows because they love knowing what's going to happen. And I'm like, don't diagnose me. The internet, every 5 seconds I get a diagnosis from the internet because it's like, you have ADHD, you love to rewatch shows. And I'm like, I just like something in the background while I work. Give me a break. I don't have every disease, sir. But I in 2016 I knew Donald Trump was going to win, and I feel people say that now to show they're so smart and they're so cool. But I felt it intuitively and I felt it historically. Like he was the perfect fascist. And I the thing about history, and we could talk about it in terms of colonization, is if people we run on this concept, oh, just because you're broke you're not broken, yet you are made broke to be broken. Like, poverty is a weapon. It is a psychological weapon as much as a physical weapon. If you make somebody poor enough, they're going to go crazy. And wrong is right and right is wrong, up is down and down is up. You can control them. And throughout history, the poor have always been the most oppressed group to not have full acknowledgement of its oppression, of its humanitarian needs, human rights, representation. And it's because out of all the oppressed groups, despite it being the one that is consistent throughout history and of greatest size, because it's always 99 versus 1, it is the only group that undeniably wants to be its oppressor. It's kind of like not all women want to be men. Of course, we would love having full rights like men. And I think every woman and every man at least once thought, what would be the male version of me, the female version of me? Like, that's just human. We just imagine ourselves in different roles. That's just normal. But every poor person wants to be rich because rich isn't just about having money, it's about having access to health, even access to space. I mean, sometimes I look at, like, these my I have to do an episode about Zillow because Yali is always going on Zillow and like marking the mansions, her dream mansion, and whether or not she ever ends up in a mansion, who knows. But my God, I'm just like, that looks so breathable compared to where we live. And we all have like good, stable jobs. Like, we're not necessarily hanging on threads, and yet we live in a thread. Um, and I think that that's why the rich and the 1%, I don't know if they will ever leave. I don't know if there will be a time where globally we will, I hope so. I hope so because in voting Donald Trump, we definitely voted for World War III. I mean, it's coming. And I don't think that America will necessarily win it. My hope is that we don't lose it, in part because Donald is just not the guy you want to lead you in World War III, and he will probably cause more damage at home than abroad. So, I mean, the point is, we just fried ourselves. And I, I just, as I was watching the election and the aftermath, I felt sad for America because I really, we pick presidents like I pick partners, and I pick pricks. I pick people. I just genuinely thought, if I know what I don't want, and if I focus on not finding my dad, somebody who verbally and psychologically abuses me, somebody who steals from me, somebody who plots against me, if I just find somebody who doesn't do that to me, I found the one. And what I found with a lot of my exes that, I'm trying to overcome the anger and sadness of, is that they were all like my dad in that they were really good at making false promises. They were really good at looking like the greatest guy to be drenched in your blood and holding a knife and swear he's not the killer. You know, they were really good at kind words. And by the time I entered adulthood, I just, I didn't have that. I didn't have kind words growing up. I didn't grow up in a family that complimented me. Every triumph I had was either responded with, well, you should have had that. Like, you should have gotten A's. You should have been the lead. You should have been the president. Or responded with, somebody will do it better. And it's funny because when it's this weird thing. Like, my dad thought one of my brothers was going to be like the ultimate football star and would my God, speak about him in a way that he never spoke about me like. And one of my uncles adored his daughter and would speak about her beauty while calling me ugly. Both of them called me ugly. And they weren't special, but they were spoken about as if they were rockets in the sky. And I say that because they made me believe that in general, people don't talk about their kids or others as if they're that special. Yet they were the examples uh, to me of people that do. They just were choosing not to do that for me because my uncle was like my dad. My father was, in the end, my enemy. He was my destroyer. Yet they both, my uncle was like my dad in the sense of he was very funny. Like, he became a father figure because we laughed a lot. And in my family, because my mother's family was very bullying. They just lived in between jokes, prayers, and fights. When they weren't fighting, they were praying. When they weren't praying, they were laughing. When they weren't laughing, they were probably fighting again. Like, they just had three modes: anger, humor, spirituality. And I just, so, if you're connected with somebody in terms of your belief system and your humor, like, if those are the three modes of my family, we had two out of three. Well, I had nothing with my dad. And I didn't see in perspective. I just, like, my mother was not a woman of, like, she did not say I love you very often. I was the initiator. I had to hug her, and she would say, I don't like that, and that's okay. And then I had this father who was just bashing me every single day. Just, you're horrible, you're horrible, you're horrible. Like, just dumping all this negative energy on me. And I really went into the world thinking, now that I'm free from these people where I have distance from them, I'm going to find the people that give me love. And I know what love isn't. So automatically, I know what love is. And throughout history, it happened in World War One and World War Two. Poverty and the brokenness of people always made them choose a dictator. And we're broken. We're absolutely broke and broken. And what sucks is people choose a dictator because they're so broken that they think if he breaks another person, I go up. Because it works according to exchanges. That was the whole point of colonization. All these colonizers were horribly mistreated. I mean, Christopher Columbus was our first Donald Trump. He was a blubbering idiot. He was rejected by everybody. And he got the equivalent of a flat tire in his ship. And if you read his letters of his encounters with the Tainos, he's like, I've never experienced such kindness. I'm going to kill him. Like, his judgment of kindness is just absolutely evil. Like, he writes how well he's being treated, how he's never been welcomed in such a way, and he judges it as idiocy. And my father judged my love for him as, like, just a stupid bitch, literally called me that. And I see that that's why he was so malicious. If you see somebody being good to you as something to judge them on, you are a malicious human being. You do not deserve love. The flip side of that, in my case, is if you see somebody who is going to abuse you and you call that love, you're an absolute idiot and you deserve what's coming to you. And it sounds so incredibly harsh because what's coming to you is absolute suffering and devastation, things that you swore you didn't want to go through, and not in a 10 times worse spectacle like World War III. And I felt really bad by the results of the election. And I'm still on astrology TikTok that swears it's going to get overturned because false hope is a beautiful thing. Um, but I'm sad because, in a way, you're right. Fascism is right. There are broken people. Even amidst broke people, there are those that are most broken. But the ones that throughout history are always destroyed are women and children, the disabled, those that suffer from mental handicaps, animals, environment. Like the really helpless are the first ones to get destroyed. And they're never fully represented in any election, in any vote. Nobody thinks about the ones that are really at the edge, that were born at the edge. In growing up with a sickly mother and an abusive dad, I couldn't avoid that. In my family, I had like two cousins that had Down syndrome. In my family, I was known as the sweet one. And my cousins with Down syndrome, I just, my family could be so mean. And here were these two people that had personalities, but they were also sweet. And that was the thing, in my family they were mean, but oh, I just have personality. Like that mean person that swears they're just honest. Um and I think they taught me that personality can be kind. And they have pre-existing conditions. They do need help. They are older, like 50s, 60s. So this election, I mean, I know that I'm on the side of the internet where we talk about the mentally challenged and the disabled, and I'm scared because I know what's coming, and I hate it because fascists are right. Like they voted according to racism, they voted according to sexism, and they voted those things according to those things because they're broke. And the problem is when you're so broke, you are broken. And when you're so broken, you really think breaking another person is going to either make you financially better or feel better. And you're up for it. And that's not good. That's never good. And yeah, I guess that's very similar to my dating life. you know? I really went into a lot of my partnerships thinking that they would help me and heal the parts of me that were broken in childhood, that they would be examples to me, whether as my boss, as my friend, or as my lover, of a good man, a man that actually steps up, a man that actually helps you rather than sabotages you, puts you in problems. And they weren't. They weren't. And Donald Trump will not be a savior. He might very well be the end of the world. Or he might that he's going to cause a lot of destruction and devastation. We saw it from 2016 to 2020. He literally caused death, and I fully expect him to cause much, much more. It is his MO. My hope is that after we've suffered, that light finally comes and it stays. Because that was the thing about the world wars. What I find interesting about where we're headed is that this is the third world war where but the first one where like media, I mean, we're all connected. Part of what happened with World War II, it was the start of journalism, particularly war journalism. It was the start of media, and part of why media started was there was this concept of The reason we're fighting so much is because we don't know each other and we don't know what's happening to each other. And if we just do a thing like newspapers, maybe everybody would be nice. And now, I mean, my God, we have so much news. Even if it's fascist control, it's almost unavoidable. You're going to find out something. You're going to find out things you don't like. You're going to find out things you do. You're going to find out lies. You're going to find out truths. It's overwhelming. And I expect that in World War III, there will be an uptick in censorship, but it's also kind of unavoidable that you will not be censored. And how that will play out is obviously going to be interesting for historians, devastating for us who have to go through the history. My God, the things we have experienced, climate change, global pandemics, the absolute eradication of any concept known as middle class. Um, Jesus, my God, to everybody out there who listens to this podcast, you're so strong because you're not only going through history, but you're being constantly bombarded by it via even this podcast, these apps. It's almost inescapable. There's no breath. No wonder people are fractured. I just hate. I guess my hope was I was talking to my friend and I felt like, you know, do I think Kamala would have been a good president, not a great one. I don't think she the problem with all presidents is that they at best they were good to a few, bad to many. You know, even Obama he still has the highest deportation rates, drones, fracking, like he had his sins. But then you compare to, who's another one? Teddy Roosevelt. I think he was known as an environmentalist, but if the way he treated Puerto Rico, my God, I don't know what savage environment he was born in. And I feel like America's just desperate for a savior that will never come because we have to save ourselves. And when World War II happened, there was this idea of like, wow, 250 million people overall are no longer on this earth. We can't do that again. That is terrifying. 250 million people are dead. Doesn't matter what sides they were on, doesn't matter what their ages, their race, none of it matters. They're dead. There were points at World War II where we all thought, like, my God, are we gonna end the world? And because one guy, a few men, and I feel like, I'm obviously using humor, but I think I've always felt that the individual experience can reflect the communal historical experience. And I get upset at myself because I have always chosen to learn via pain. And yes, it comes from my father's abuse of me. But how long can you learn always to choose? How long can you always choose to learn the hard way and not see that you're the problem? You know, yes, you were abused. Yes, you were broke. But my God, I offered you medicine or a machete, and you chose the machete? I thought you were crying that you were wounded. What is the machete going to do if not rip up the wounds more? And I think that's what makes me sad. I do feel history has proven humanity is resilient and we will overcome. Oh my God, the things we're going to have to overcome. And I think that's what a lot of people feel like. Oh my God. Especially as you get older. I think that's what's happening. We were talking about joining the 4B movement because, I mean, obviously this was a vote against women, right? Um, and there's just this feeling women are aged. My father aged me all my life. By the time I was 2, I was actually 20. And that's part of our abuse, right? To be aged quicker. And when you're aged quicker, you feel old sooner. Like you go, if you age somebody soon, you By the, like, if you, like I said, I was 2 and my father acted like I was 20. And what that did to me was that it made me, he made me go through experiences that no child should go through. So that by the time I got to 20, I felt like I had 20,000 years of life. And I felt so tired of bad experiences, abusive experiences, especially via men, that I became desperate and I didn't analyze and I was blinded and I just took words as truth despite being raised by a liar. And it screwed me. It totally screwed me because you can't say you're hurt and then never heal. You can't say you're ready to go and not look at how you've moved. And after World War II, I love that I'm comparing world wars with my dating life. They do look similar. After World War II, we really thought like we officially understand humanity. We officially accept that we're a hot mess. And we're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to put ourselves on edges anymore. And somebody said, like, damn, we didn't even reach 100 years and we're already going to do a World War III. And the poor are going to get poorer. They're going to get more violent. I think there was like a Nazi reunion in front of some Anne Frank reading. Ugh, Jesus, humanity. You're really gonna do it again? I can't with you. I can't with your humanity. Hopefully, this world war. I love that. I'm like, yeah, it's happening. Because it's just, humanity does repeat itself. And that's what Daddy Recovery is about. How my humanity repeats itself in some ways. And how it can be, if you might really find your story in me. And hopefully, I get better so you can too. But humanity does repeat itself, and no matter how hard we try, and it's because of that idea, and it's something that manifestation TikTok talks about. Where you put your energy matters. If you put it in fear, you may think you're being cautious, but you're actually just being scared, and it's going to feed the fear. Fear only gets fearer or furor. Oh God, I can't believe God, Donald Trump is our Fuhrer. And I don't even say that like, I just say that as like, ugh. I just, like, I don't know how to explain it. Ugh. Like, I was watching the last episode of The Penguin and I'm like, God, he's such a bad, like, horrible human being for all that he gets away with. And I think what's so interesting with Donald Trump and the Penguin and my dad is that when you really look at them, they're not remarkable. They're just evil. They just cause harm. Um, but and when you look at how they might have ruined your life or will ruin your life, God forbid, God forbid, it is forbidden. And so it is. I don't need any more pain from my dad. Um, when you look how they've ruined your life, part of the grief of being their abuse victim is this kind of, you weren't that great for how you made me feel so bad. And where did you get this power over me? And for so long. It's kind of like you look at the penguin, he's hobbling everywhere. He's got an ass crack of a scar across his face. How did this how did this guy like nearly destroy a city, murdered all these good people? I don't want to get into spoilers. Like how did he do it? He was literally like just hit him on his bad knee and he's done. Sit down, sir. It's funny because we were talking. God, I'm rambling with you, but I do think about that a lot in terms of my exes, in terms of this election, even in terms of Diddy. Like, why, when did these people are so heavy for how unremarkable they are? Like, Diddy only had to do an album. He wasn't even that great of a rapper. He was just a good producer. And you could find those anywhere, especially nowadays, post pandemic. Where did the human trafficking come in? Do you know what I mean? Like when in the studio did somebody say sex slaves? Like even Donald Trump, this is a guy who a failed businessman that really got lucky in terms of how much money he was able to scam despite it all. When did this whole like let me become the ruler of the earth, like why don't people want to rest? Even my dad, why marry multiple women? Just become a bachelor. George Clooney. You're handsome enough. Just George Clooney this, sir. You know? I don't know, maybe it's me. I just don't. Crime is so anxiety inducing. Like, to be in front of, oh no, maybe they're just, I'm rambling. Just check out D'Angelo Views. Just check out Daddy Recovery.